Rhain Voss died twice, once in a random accident on Earth, and once as a pathetic, abused disciple in the lowest sect of a ruthless cultivation world. Transmigrating into the world where the strong rule as gods and the weak are trampled into the dirt. Mercy is just another word for suicide. The original Rain Voss learned this truth the hard way when he was beaten to death in a filthy alley by his fellow disciples for simply looking at them the wrong way. A cold, pragmatic soul from Earth awakens in that broken body who was done being a victim. Fortunately, he didn't come empty-handed. Ding. Sign in system initialized. First sign unsuccessful. Reward. Abyssal's sovereign physique. C61. Ultimate plan. We took everything. For a fraction of a second, Doris Graves and Harmon Vale simply stood there, their minds completely failing to process the sheer, incomprehensible magnitude of what they had just heard. And then a feeling of pure ecstasy flooded their minds. Hundreds of rare-grade martial arts, rare-grade weapons, priceless spiritual herbs. With these unimaginable resources, the Azure Cloud sect and the Graves family would completely dominate the Grey Mist region. But ecstatic smiles could fully bloom on their faces. The grim reality hit them. Valerius is dead. Every single member of the Iron Peak sect and the Barlo family, they were all slaughtered. Not a single one survived. They knew exactly what this meant. In the entire Grey Mist town, the balance of power had always been very fragile. The Iron Peak sect possessed 4 spirit manifestation realm cultivators, including the tyrannical Dorian Croft. The Barlo family possessed 2, led by Loen. A total of 6 spirit manifestation experts. On the other side, the Azure Cloud sect had exactly 3, Harmon, Great Elder Silas, and Second Elder Amos. The Graves family had 2, Doris and his father Corey. A total of 5. The reason these 4 factions had not gone to all-out war despite the Iron Peak Alliance's clear superiority in strength was simple. Mutual destruction. Even if Dorian and Loen managed to completely annihilate the Azure Cloud sect and the Graves family, the dying counterattacks of 5 spirit manifestation experts would inflict irreversible, devastating damage on their own ranks. That fear had maintained the peace. But now, that fear no longer existed. Their top talents were dead. Their core elders were slaughtered. The Iron Peak and Barlo factions had completely lost their future. They had absolutely nothing left to lose. And precisely because they were ruined, they had absolutely nothing left to lose. They would retaliate with the maddened, suicidal desperation of a ferocious beast whose offspring had just been murdered. Harmon and Doris exchanged a single, heavy glance. In that fraction of a second, an unspoken resolve was forged between them. Torin, Harmon commanded solemnly, take Rain and everyone back, and leave this place immediately. He turned his gaze toward the distant peaks of the Azure Cloud sect. Seal the sect gates. No one is allowed to step outside for an entire year. Doris stepped forward, placing a heavy, trembling hand on his younger brother's shoulder. Roderick, Doris said, his voice unusually soft but firm. From today onward, you are the head of the Graves family. Take care of our bloodline. Roderick's hawkish eyes shrank to pinpoints. He instantly realized what they were planning to do. Brother, no. Roderick grabbed Doris's arm and pleaded. What are you doing? You can't. It wasn't hard to understand what both Harmon and Doris decided to do next. If Dorian and Loen were killed here, the enemy factions would lose their heads. Without their leaders, the remaining spirit manifestation experts would lack the unity to launch an all-out war. And with that mountain of resources, and just 1 year of time, no one in Grey Mist Town would ever be able to stop the rise of their sect and family. Furthermore, they weren't just betting their life on those resources. Harmon looked at Rain. With Rain's logic-breaking talent, 1 year was all they needed. Just 1 year. And Rain would grow into an invincible monster that no one in Grey Mist Town could ever hope to stop. Therefore, Harmon and Doris had both decided to sacrifice their own lives to drag Dorian and Loen down to hell. Realizing this, Roderick whipped his head around, his pleading gaze locking onto the dark-robed youth standing quietly at the side. Rhain had told him the Golden Palace that he could deal with Dorian. He must have a plan. Feeling the panicked gazes falling upon him, Rhain stepped forward. His dark gray irises swept over the grim, resolved faces of the two faction leaders. "There is no need to be so worried," he said calmly, his voice utterly devoid of any worry that had plastered everyone's face. He looked at Harmon and Doris, whose auras were already beginning to silently surge with suicidal resolve. "I have a way to kill Dorian." The words fell lightly, but in the ears of the gathered elders, they echoed like a booming thunderclap. Harmon, Doris, Roderick, and Torin all turned their heads, looking at the dark-robed youth with intense curiosity. Kill a spirit manifestation realm expert at the 7th level? It was a statement so completely absurd that if any other essence condensation youth had uttered it, they would have been immediately slapped for their sheer ignorance. But when those words were uttered from Rhain's mouth, not a single trace of doubt surfaced in their minds. After watching him effortlessly crush a massive beast horde, casually slaughter 4 peak level 9 essence condensation experts, and casually shatter the puppet at the spirit manifestation realm, their common sense had long been shattered into dust. Right now, if Rhain pointed up and said he could poke a hole in the sky with a single finger, they would obediently nod and ask which finger he wanted to use. "You really have a way?" Harmon asked, his voice trembling slightly. "Who would like to die if they could live?" "I do." Rhain simply nodded. While the Azure Cloud sect and Graves family members quietly organized themselves behind Rhain, the atmosphere on the exact opposite side of the crater was undergoing a chilling shift. Dorian Croft and Loen Barlo stood near the edge of the spatial rift. The cruel, mocking sneers that had been on their faces had slowly begun to stiffen, before gradually melting into an incredibly ugly darkness. Time was ticking away. 50 people. Not a single shadow had emerged from the shimmering gateway. Impossible, Dorian thought, forcefully denying the ominous thought that was involuntarily surfacing in his mind. Loen gripped his serpent wood cane so tightly his knuckles turned white. They forced the creeping dread down into the deepest pits of their stomachs and waited patiently, their unblinking eyes burning a hole into the spatial gateway. 1 minute passed. 2 minutes passed. Suddenly, the massive silver vortex in the center of the crater began to tremble. Scream! A loud, ear-piercing shriek of tearing space ripped through the barren valley. Under the widened eyes of Dorian and Loen, the massive silver gateway rapidly collapsed inward, and then, pop, it vanished completely without a trace. The gate of the Hollow Realm had closed, and according to the absolute spatial laws of the world, it would not open again for another 5 years. Anyone trapped inside was either already dead or will be torn to shreds by the collapsing inner dimensions. The realization struck Dorian and Loen. No one was coming out. Valerius, Drask, Vespera, Byron, Vargas, dead. Every single one of them had been wiped from the face of this world. No! Loen stumbled backward, his serpent wood came clattering against the rocky ground. His face was entirely devoid of blood. No, my family, all of them. Beside him, Dorian Croft stood perfectly still. Then his mind completely and utterly snapped. Boom! An earth-shattering aura of the level 7 spirit manifestation realm exploded from Dorian's massive body. He took a step forward, his bloodshot eyes locking onto the surviving members of the Azure Cloud sect and the Graves family. What happened to my son? Dorian's roar shook the barren valley. Torin stepped forward, his eyes locked on Dorian without a shred of fear. Dead, Torin spat. Every single one of them is dead. Dorian froze. Before his brain could even process the words, a harsh, mocking laugh erupted across the crater. Roderick stepped up beside Torin, gripping his blood-stained broadsword with an unhinged grin. "And your precious son, Dorian?" Roderick threw his head back and laughed loudly. "I killed him myself. You should have seen him, Dorian." When he realized he was going to die, that arrogant bastard dropped straight to his knees. He smashed his head against the stone floor until it bled. He sobbed and begged me not to kill him like a miserable, pathetic dog. You lie. Dorian growled. His entire body trembled like a mountain before a landslide. Lot. Doris stepped to the forefront, his face twisting with fury. Dorian, you have the nerve to ask what happened. Doris roared. How dare you collude with Vargas? You allied yourself with that bloodthirsty bandit scum to set a death trap for our people. Doris pointed a trembling finger straight at Dorian's face. It is a blessing from the gods that your people died. They deserved every ounce of their miserable deaths. And today, you will join them in hell. Dorian's mind buzzed. The words pierced his brain like poison needles. His son, the pride of the Iron Peak sect, begging on his knees like a dog? Even if a tiny fragment of his rationality screamed that Roderick was merely taunting him, that this was a trap designed to enrage him, it didn't matter. The irrefutable truth remained hovering right before his eyes. The hollow realm was closed. No one was coming back. His son was gone forever. He had heard the absolute worst thing a father could hear, delivered in the most agonizing, cruel way imaginable. I will tear you all to pieces. Dorian let out a roar that completely defied human limits. Boom! The ground beneath his feet shattered into a spiderweb of craters. The sheer force of his spirit manifestation aura blew the surrounding boulders into dust. He shot forward, hurtling directly toward Roderick and Torin to rip their heads from their shoulders. But there was a figure even faster. Swoosh! A dark-robed silhouette blurred from behind Torin and Roderick. A violent trail of lightning flashed on his wake. As Rhain passed Doris, he raised his right hand. Resting between his fingers was a small, glass-like bead, glowing with an unstable, violently churning golden light. With a casual flick of his wrist, Rhain threw the glowing orb directly at Dorian's face. Dorian, completely blinded by his rage, didn't even bother to register what the tiny object was. He raised his massive hand, infused with the terrifying, mountain-crushing power of his level 7 spirit manifestation essence, and slapped the glowing orb away. It was the biggest mistake of his entire life. The moment Dorian's thick palm made contact with the glass-like surface of the bead, crack, the small orb shattered, and then, boom, C-62, gang up against Dorian. Boom! A blinding sphere of searing golden white fire swallowed Dorian Croth entirely. No! The destructive shockwave equivalent to the full-powered self-destruction of a peak spirit manifestation realm expert detonated point-blank against Dorian's unprotected body. It was as if a miniature sun exploded on the barren valley. The deafening blast ripped through the air, sending a hurricane of scorching wind and debris in every direction. Scorching essence tore through the valley, completely obliterating the surrounding boulders into dust. Loen, who had been standing dozens of paces behind Dorian, was caught in the periphery of the blast. His horrified scream was drowned out as the scorching shockwave explosively launched him through the air, his robes catching fire as he crashed heavily against a rock. On the Azure Cloud side, Doris, Torin, and Roderick had not stayed to watch. The exact moment Rhain launched the orb, they had already kicked off the ground, madly retreating backward with every last ounce of their strength. The three of them poured every single drop of their essence into creating a shield in front of them. Yet, the residual shockwave still smashed into their barrier, violently blasting them backward and leaving them with internal injuries. Further back, Harmon had instantaneously erected a massive dome of essence to cover Ceres, Marin, and the rest of the disciples. Thanks to the safe distance and Harmon's defense, they remained unscathed, their eyes widened in horror as they beheld the deafening explosion. Rhain had also retreated, powered by the flashing thunderboots. He had fallen back with expeditious speed, crossing his arms to form an iron mountain shroud of compressed dark essence. But the shockwave of a power akin to the self-destruction of a spirit manifestation was simply too vast. The scorching blast shattered his dark barrier. The uncommon grade shadow stealth robe was torn, revealing several cuts on his arms and chest. This was the very first time since he had transmigrated into this brutal world that his body had been injured. The very first time he had bled. But the bleeding did not last long. The astonishing regenerative power of the Abyssal sovereign Physique instantly kicked in. The bleeding stopped in a second, the torn flesh knitting back together at a rapid pace. Rhain lowered his arms. His dark gray eyes pierced through the settling dust and smoke, locking onto the epicenter of the blast. A molten crater nearly 100 feet deep had been carved directly into the bedrock of the valley. And kneeling in the dead center of that smoking pit was Dorian Loen Barlo, who had been blown to the far edge of the valley and was currently coughing up blood, stared at the crater with widened, trembling eyes. "Deeds, Dorian?" Loen gasped in disbelief. Dorian was still alive, but his current state was miserable. Dorian's flesh was severely burned, deep lacerations exposing his blackened bones. He fell heavily onto one knee, vomiting a puddle of crimson blood. The tyrannical aura of the 7th level of the spirit manifestation realm that he had radiated just moments prior had weakened significantly. Dorian forced his head up tremblingly. His bloodshot eyes locked onto the dark-robed youth standing at the edge of the crater and staring back at him with an emotionless gaze. Recognition struck him like a bolt of lightning. He remembered now. Before the spatial vortex had opened, he had glanced at this boy. He had felt something incomprehensibly different about him, but had dismissed it as entirely irrelevant. A mere essence awakening insect was not worthy of second glance from someone of his stature. But now, this same youth had nearly killed him. Dorian finally understood the catastrophic magnitude of his oversight. "It was you," Dorian growled. "Everything that happened, it was all because of you." Rhain faced the strongest man in the gray mist town, without any ripples in his eyes. "You are right. It was me," Rhain said, his voice carrying across the silent valley like the toll of a funeral bell. "Vargas, Byron, Drask, your son Valerius. All of them were killed by me." Rhain took a slow step forward. "And next, I'm going to kill you." A heavy silence fell over the crater. Then Dorian began to laugh. "Ha ha ha. Perhaps Doris was right." Dorian roared, coughing up blood. "The gods themselves must be angry with my Iron Peak sect to send someone like you to a dying, pathetic sect. I had everything planned." Dorian spoke as he staggered to his feet. "Every detail, every contingency. I had meticulously planned the complete annihilation of the Azure Cloud sect." Dorian's ruined face twisted into a grimace. "I just never expected someone like you to appear." His aura, though devastated, began to surge once more. The flickering candlelight of his cultivation suddenly steadied, burning with the maddened, desperate intensity of a man who had already accepted his death and now sought only to drag his enemies into the grave alongside him. "But even if it is the will of the gods that my Iron Peak sect perishes today," Dorian's voice dropped to a chilling absolute whisper, "I won't let my enemies celebrate." Boom! Dorian kicked off the shattered bedrock, hurtling toward Rhain like a dying beast as he roared. "I won't accept this cruel destiny. I will kill you and bury the entire Azure Cloud sect with me." His fist, wrapped with the strength of the 7th level of spirit manifestation realm, hurtled directly toward Rhain's head. Rhain didn't try to dodge. This was his first battle since breaking through to the essence condensation realm. He wanted to see exactly how hard he could hit. The Abyssal sovereign Physique was fully unleashed. A pitch-black, devastatingly compressed essence surged, gathering around his right fist. Void fist. Rhain's fist shot forward. Two fists collided in the center of the valley. Bang! A shockwave of intertwined dark and golden essence exploded from the point of impact, tearing a massive fissure across the valley floor. The two forces ground against each other for a fraction of a heartbeat. Then, the balance shattered. Both figures were pushed apart. Rhain's body skidded across the rocky ground. He slid backward for over a dozen paces, his right arm trembling due to impact. Even with the invincible foundation of the Abyssal sovereign Physique, crossing an entire major realm and several minor realms to clash directly with a level 7 spirit manifestation expert was no small feat. On the other side of the crater, Dorian fared much worse. The impact of Void Fist further worsened his internal wounds and forced him to cough up blood and flesh. Dorian raised his head again, ignoring the excruciating pain. He was ready to launch another attack. Dorian, don't forget about us. Two figures blurred into the battlefield beside Rhain, Harmon and Doris. At the exact same time, a blood-red aura erupted from the far side of the valley. Loen Barlo had finally staggered to his feet at the far edge of the valley. He knew perfectly well that if Dorian died here, the Barlo family would be the very next to be slaughtered. There was no retreat. It was do or die. If we are destined to perish today, you will all accompany us to the underworld. Loen shrieked as he poured his essence into the serpentwood cane, transforming it into a massive, venomous blood-red snake projection that hissed behind his head. 4 spirit, manifestation, realm cultivators were going to fight to death. C63, Dorian's Fall. Harmon's eyes sharpened like swords. With a flash of light, a 3-foot sword appeared in his hand. Beside him, Doris unsheathed a massive halberd, its crescent blade gleaming with golden essence. Your opponent is me, Loen. Doris thundered. Boom! Doris shot forward, his massive golden halberd streaking through the air. He turned into a blinding streak of golden light, hurtling directly toward the blood-red serpent projection conjured by Loen. Doris! Loen shrieked, swinging his serpentwood cane to meet the heavy blow. Clang! The golden halberd and the blood-red cane collided, carrying the might of 2 spirit manifestation realm level 4, sending a massive shockwave rippling throughout the valley. Roderick, Dorian, and all other Azure Cloud members hurriedly retreated to a safe side. This level of fight wasn't something that they could interfere. Harmon's solemn eyes were locked on Dorian. The day had finally come when he will face Dorian. Let's end this, Dorian. Swoosh! Harmon's figure blurred. An arc of blue sword light, over 50 feet long, slashed directly toward Dorian's neck. Dorian let out a feral growl. Completely abandoning all defense, Dorian didn't even try to block or evade the sword. Instead, his golden essence condensed into a massive claw that swiped directly at Harmon's chest. Squelch! Harmon's sword chi carved a gruesome gash across Dorian's chest, slicing through his flesh. Bang! But at the exact same time, the massive tiger claw slammed into Harmon. Harmon was blasted backward, and his face paled. Despite Dorian's severe wounds, he was still 2 small realms above Harmon. All of you died. Dorian was going berserk. But in the fraction of a second Dorian used to strike Harmon, a chilling gust of wind blew past his ear. Rain materialized behind Dorian. Dark essence compressed around Rain's knuckles as he vigorously slammed his fist against Dorian's back. But as if Dorian had eyes behind his head. Without looking back, Dorian's left hand snapped backward, his palm perfectly intercepting Rain's incoming fist, while his right hand simultaneously raised to strike Rain. Bang! Rain slid backward for a few paces, a faint trace of surprise flashing through his dark gray eyes. This was the chasm between the essence condensation realm and the spirit manifestation realm. Upon stepping into the spirit manifestation realm, a cultivator awakened their spiritual sense. They no longer needed physical eyes to see the world. The environment around them, every rustle of the wind, every falling leaf, could be seen through the spiritual sense. Being able to intercept Rain's attack so precisely, Dorian's grasp over his spiritual sense was highly proficient. You think the same cheap tricks will work twice? Dorian scorned, but his face was ashen. He was clearly blocking Rain's attacks, yet those intercepted attacks could phase through his defensive shield and directly impact him internally. What kind of demonic skill was that? Swoosh! He didn't have time to think, as a blue sword light targeted him. Squelch! Harmon's sword pierced Dorian's left shoulder, drawing a fountain of dark blood. But Dorian didn't even flinch. He grabbed the razor-sharp blade with his bare, searing hand, ignoring the flesh slicing to the bone, and delivered a devastating kick directly into Harmon's chest. Crack! Blood sprayed from Harmon's mouth, his body violently blasted backward. At that exact fraction of a second, Rain's dark figure blurred past Dorian's guard. Bang! A void fist slammed squarely into Dorian's exposed side. Dorian forcibly twisted his massive body, completely abandoning defense, and smashed his golden-wrapped fist directly into Rain's shoulder. Rain was sent skidding across the rocky terrain, his bones groaning under the sheer, mountain-crushing might of a level 7 spirit manifestation expert. But the Abyssal sovereign Physique instantly absorbed the brunt of the devastating impact. The tearing in his muscles knit back together in the blink of an eye. Rain didn't pause for even a second. He kicked off the ground and shot right back into the fray. Dorian fought with absolutely zero regard for his own life. He traded his flesh for their blood, relying entirely on his superior realm and his spiritual sense to launch suicidal counterattacks. He took Harmon's sword slashes and Rain's heavy punches, solely focused on taking them down with him. But the longer the battle dragged on, the more grave his condition became. Rain's void fist was not an ordinary martial art. Every single time Rain's fist connected with Dorian's body, the compressed void essence bypassed his external golden aura and detonated directly inside his meridian channels. Crack! Another one of Dorian's ribs fractured from the inside out. Gah! Dorian staggered. The internal devastation was finally catching up to him. Harmon saw the opening immediately and slashed down with his sword. Swoosh! Dorian turned around. His golden essence formed a condensed shield to block the descending blade. Clang! The sword light bit deep into the golden barrier. Harmon pressed forward relentlessly, pouring every ounce of his level 5 spirit manifestation cultivation into the strike, forcing Dorian into a deadlock. Now! Harmon roared. Rain didn't need to be reminded. With a 5-fold speed multiplier of flashing thunderboots, Rain vanished from his spot. Even Dorian's spiritual sense could hardly register the streak of lightning closing in on his back. Dorian was forced to abandon his defense and throw an abrupt backhand to block Rain. In that split second of distraction, Dorian's golden barrier collapsed. Squelch! Harmon's blue sword light mercilessly tore into Dorian's chest. The strike was so ruthlessly fast that it sliced straight through his burned flesh, cutting into his sternum. At the exact same time, Rain's void fist heavily smashed against Dorian's hastily raised backhand. Crack! Dorian's promptly raised hand could not stop Rain's full force attack. His forearms fractured from inside out. Dorian staggered. Blood poured from his chest wound, and his shattered forearms hung limp at his sides. But Harmon and Rain gave him no reprieve. Swoosh! Harmon closed the distance in a flash, his sword carving 3 rapid arcs of blue light aimed at Dorian's throat, heart, and knees. Dorian twisted sideways, dodging the first 2 slashes through sheer instinct, but the third carved a deep gash across his left thigh. He buckled. Bang! A void fist detonated against Dorian's stomach. Dorian lurched forward, a spray of dark blood erupting from his mouth. You won't. Dorian gasped, forcing his broken body to turn. He swung a wild, desperate fist at Rain, but the movement was sluggish. But Rain dodged it easily using his flashing thunderboots. Harmon's sword pierced through from behind, driving straight through Dorian's right shoulder and pinning his arm in place. Gah! Dorian screamed like a dying beast as he crashed to his knees. His vision blurred with blood and sweat. He forced his head up, meeting Rain's emotionless gray eyes and Harmon's resolute gaze. His son was dead. His sect was ruined. His arms were broken, and his internal organs were failing one by one. He had lost. A twisted smile crept across Dorian's blood-soaked face. If my Iron Peak sect ends today, Dorian howled with boundless rage, hatred, and unwillingness. You are coming to hell with me. His flickering golden aura suddenly reversed direction. Instead of flowing outward, it violently compressed inward, spiraling toward his dantian at a horrifying speed. Harmon's face changed drastically. He's going to self-destruct, Harmon shouted. Before Harmon could finish his sentence, a streak of icy blue light rushed past him. It struck the defenseless Dorian with pinpoint precision. Frost spread across his flesh in a split second, halting his surging essence and freezing his towering frame into a solid ice sculpture. But Dorian was still an expert at the 7th level of the spirit manifestation realm. The sheer disparity in cultivation meant the ice could not hold him forever. Within 1 second, cracks rapidly webbed across the thick ice. It took Dorian exactly 2 seconds to break free. The ice shattered, sending frozen shards flying across the crater. But those 2 seconds were all Rhain needed. Rhain had already raised his hand. For the first time, dark essence surged through the 72 meridian pathways of his new epic grade martial art. Heavenly severing palm. The sky above them darkened. A massive palm print forged of dense dark essence materialized in the air, blotting out the light. It slammed down. Boom! The earth-shattering impact rocked the entire valley. A huge, palm-shaped crater was carved into the bedrock right where Dorian stood. In the dead center of the crater lay Dorian, his golden aura completely shattered, his bones pulverized, coughing up massive chunks of his own internal organs. He was barely clinging to his last breath. Rhain didn't pause. He raised his hand again and brought it down. Boom! Another huge palm print crashed into the crater. Boom! 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 Then a third, a fourth, a fifth. He used the epic grade heavenly severing palm 5 times consecutively without a single second of pause. The shockwaves pounded the earth again and again, creating a localized earthquake that made everyone watching in the distance fall to their knees in absolute terror. Finally, Rhain slowly lowered his hand. The dark essence in the sky dissipated, allowing the light of the valley to return. Harmon, Roderick, Loen Barlo, and every single surviving disciple stared blankly at the epicenter of the destruction. Even Loen and Doris had stopped, their enlarged eyes looking at the gruesome scene. The colossal, hand-shaped crater was now dozens of feet deep, and at the bottom of the crater, Dorian Croft, the undisputed strongest cultivator in all of Greymis Town. He had been thoroughly turned into an unrecognizable puddle of blood and meat paste. C64, a march straight to Iron Peak sect. A dreadful silence fell over the entire valley. Not a single person dared to breathe loudly. Every single person standing in the barren valley stared at the colossal, palm-shaped crater with expressions that ranged from numb disbelief to outright, soul-crushing terror. The undisputed strongest cultivator in the entirety of Greymis Town had been reduced to an unrecognizable puddle of blood and pulverized meat. Loen Barlo stood as rigid as a stone statue. The serpentwood cane slipped from his trembling hands. Never in his scariest nightmares did Loen ever think he would see this day come. At the edge of the crater, Rhain slowly lowered his hand. His face was now visibly pale. Epic grade martial arts were absolutely not meant to be used by someone at the essence condensation realm. The sheer volume of essence required to map the 72 meridian pathways was astronomical, and he had used it 5 times consecutively without a single breath of pause. Even with the Abyssal sovereign physique, it wasn't easy for him. However, within the span of a few breaths, the bottomless void within his dantian cycled rapidly. Rhain let out a slow breath as he turned to look at Ceres. She was standing among Roderick, Dorian, and the cluster of Azure Cloud and Graves family experts. Her face was also slightly bloodless. Rhain understood why instantly. In that critical moment, when Dorian had attempted to self-destruct, it was Ceres who had reacted. It was her who had used that transcendent, icy blue sword light to freeze Dorian in his tracks. Standing beside her, Roderick, Dorian, and the others also stared at Ceres with faces full of amazement. If they had been hit by that transcendent sword light, with their level 8 and 9 essence condensation cultivations, they absolutely would not have lived. Another incomprehensible monster was hiding right beside them. Suddenly, a sharp gust of wind ripped through the valley. Loen turned on his heel and fled toward the edge of the valley like a stray dog bereft of its master. He is trying to escape. Harmon's voice rang out sharply. Dorian's unfaithful dog. Your master is dead. go to hell, and accompany him? Doris roared, his golden halberd tearing through the air as he blocked Loen's path. Get out of my way, Doris. Loen barked, swinging his cane with madly. Clang! The collision halted Loen's momentum. Don't even dream of leaving this place alive. Harmon's voice rang, a blue sword light already flashing toward Loen. Loen stumbled to a halt, his face twisting in sheer despair as the two surrounded him. Doris, Harmon, let me go. My Barlo family won't have animosity towards the Azure Cloud sect or Garve's family. Loen shrieked, but no one listened to his pleading. Using the flashing thunderboots, Rhain materialized directly before Loen. Dark essence compressed around his fist to the extreme limit. Void Fist. It aimed directly at Loen's head. If he didn't block it, he would definitely not live. Loen raised his arm to stop the fist, but at the exact same time, Doris's golden halberd slashed horizontally, and Harmon's sword pierced straight through the air. 3 strikes landed simultaneously. Bang! The Void Fist shattered Loen's defensive barrier. Loen's defense shattered like thin glass. No! Loen screamed. Doris's massive golden halberd smashed heavily onto his body. Squelch! In the very next instant, Harmon's blue sword pierced cleanly through the back of Loen's heart. Loen's eyes widened as he felt his life force draining away. His lips were trembling as if he wanted to say something. Thud! The patriarch of the Barlo collapsed as well. Roderick, Dorian, and others finally dared to approach them, their chests heaving as they looked at the corpses of the 2 spirit manifestation realm cultivators. It's rare for even one to die in decades, but today 2 of them fell. Thank you, Rhain said softly to Saris. If you hadn't frozen him, things would have been much more troublesome. Saris blinked, her pale purple eyes meeting his. A sweet, breathtaking smile bloomed on her flawless face despite her exhaustion. She was finally strong enough to be of some help to Rhain, beside just dragging him down as a burden. Her heart was filled with joy as she spoke delightfully. As long as I can help you, I am happy. As the 2 shared a quiet moment, Doris and Harmon walked over, their expressions returning to an unprecedented solemnity. The Iron Peak sect and the Barlo family still have 5 spirit manifestation realm cultivators in total. Doris spoke, his gaze darkening. The Barlo family only has 1 spirit manifestation realm elder left, but the Iron Peak sect still has 3. If they find out what happened here and join forces, they will still be a very dangerous threat to us. Rhain looked at Doris and gave a nod. Then we strike first, Rhain stated, his voice devoid of any hesitation. We must quickly start with the Iron Peak sect. With 3 spirit manifestation experts, they are the biggest variable. We destroy them now, before they even get an idea of what happened here. Agreed. Harmon's voice resonated with absolute authority. If we cut off the head of the snake, the rest of the body will wither. Harmon immediately reached into his robes and crushed a high-tier transmission jade. I'm summoning the entire Azure Cloud sect. All 3 of our spirit manifestation realm experts will march today. Doris did the same, crushing a golden jade slip. I have called my father. The Graves family will also join the vanguard. The decision was made in a matter of seconds. Within the span of half an hour, the entire dynamic of Grey Mist Town was completely upended. The skies above the region roared with the surging auras of countless experts. All 3 spirit manifestation realm experts of the Azure Cloud sect, Harmon, Silas, and Amos, had gathered. Corey Graves, a man with white hair, but a very muscular build, the previous head, and also the spirit manifestation realm cultivator of the Graves family, also arrived alongside Doris. Together with Rhain, Roderick, Dorian, Marin, and hundreds of elite disciples and elders, the massive army marched with earth-shaking might and vigor directly toward the Iron Peak sect. It was time for complete extermination. The streets of Grey Mist Town were thrown into absolute chaos. The citizens of the town froze in their tracks. Shopkeepers stopped mid-transaction. Children were hurriedly pulled indoors by terrified parents. 5 spirit manifestation realm cultivators marching in open formation through the streets was a sight that Grey Mist Town had never witnessed in its entire history. "What is happening?" a man whispered to his neighbor, his face full of shock and worry. "That is Azure Cloud sect master Harmon, and Garv's family head Doris," another man muttered. "Where are they going with such force?" "Look at their direction," an old woman breathed, clutching her grandchild to her chest. "They are heading toward the Iron Peak sect." A collective gasp rippled through the watching crowd. The Iron Peak sect. If they're marching with such force to the Iron Peak sect, then it could only mean one thing. They were going to war. The sky above the gray mist town is going to change today. C-65, Annihilating Iron Peak sect. Not long after, the towering iron gates of the Iron Peak sect appeared in the distance. The guards stationed at the entrance were casually chatting when they suddenly felt the earth tremble. They looked up, and their faces instantly drained of all color. "Sound the alarm," one guard screamed, his voice cracking with panic. The second guard didn't even bother with the alarm. He simply turned and sprinted into the sect compound, abandoning his post entirely, screaming at the top of his lungs. "Attack! We are under attack!" The massive coalition stopped exactly 100 paces from the iron-forged gates. Harmon stepped to the forefront. His eyes burned with decades of suppressed hatred and the memory of the elders and disciples of his sect, murdered by the Iron Peak sect and Barlo family. With a flash of brilliant light, his 3-foot sword materialized in his grasp. Harmon poured every single ounce of his level 5 spirit manifestation strength into the blade. "Iron Peak," Harmon roared, his voice echoing like thunder across the entire town. Swoosh! A colossal arc of terrifying blue sword light descended upon the gates of the Iron Peak sect. The impenetrable metal doors, designed to withstand the combined strikes of dozens of condensation experts, were effortlessly obliterated into twisted shrapnel. The surrounding stone walls exploded into dust, collapsing the entire entrance in a single, devastating blow. The deafening explosion shook the very foundations of the Iron Peak sect. "Who dares?" An indignant, furious roar immediately erupted from the depths of the Iron Peak compound. Swoosh! 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 3 towering figures blurred through the air, landing heavily before the ruined gates. They were the 3 spirit manifestation realm elders of the Iron Peak sect. The leading elder, a bald man with a scar across his jaw, named Samuel, glared at the invading army, his eyes burning with murderous fury. "Harmon! Doris!" Samuel yelled, his level 4 spirit manifestation aura erupting like a volcano. "Have you completely lost your minds? To dare attack our gates while the sect master is away. When sect master Dorian returns, he will tear your sects out by the roots." The 2 elders flanking Samuel also stepped forward, their auras surging violently. One was at the 3rd level of spirit manifestation, the other at the 2nd level. Behind them, dozens of Iron Peak sect disciples and elders were flooding out hastily. Harmon lowered his sword slightly, looking at the enraged Samuel with a gaze filled with cold pity. "You are waiting for Dorian?" Harmon's voice was eerily calm. "You will be waiting a very long time." Samuel's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" For a second, silence reigned over the Iron Peak sect. And then, Samuel threw his head back and burst into loud, mocking laughter. "Ha ha! Dead!" Samuel roared, pointing a scornful finger at Harmon. "Are you senile, old fool Harmon? Sect Master Dorian is at the 7th level of the spirit manifestation realm. He is the undisputed strongest cultivator in all of Greymist Town. Dorian could crush you and your entire pathetic sect with one hand." Behind him, the Iron Peak disciples who had heard the exchange erupted into murmurs of shock and confusion. "Sect Master Dorian dead? Impossible. He is the strongest person in the entire region. It's a bluff. They are trying to shake our morale." Samuel turned his head and barked at the gathered disciples. "Silence. This pathetic old man is merely spouting nonsense to frighten you. Sect Master Dorian is invincible. He will return and annihilate every last one of these dogs." As the Iron Peak sect mocked them, a dark-robed figure stepped forward from the Azure Cloud ranks. and stood alongside Harmon. Rhain looked at the laughing Iron Peak elders, his dark eyes bereft of any emotion. "Enough talking," Rhain said coldly, his voice slicing through the laughter like a blade of ice. "We are here to exterminate them, not to chat." Samuel's furious gaze snapped toward the dark-robed youth who had just spoken. A boy, a child by his standards, daring to speak of killing spirit manifestation experts as if he were ordering servants to sweep a floor. "And who the hell are you, brat?" Samuel snarled, his scar twisting as his face contorted with contempt. Rhain didn't answer. The Abyssal sovereign Physique erupted. Boom! A pitch-black, tyrannical suppression aura exploded from his body. Before anyone could even react to his words, a crackle of lightning erupted from his feet. Without a single wasted breath, Rhain shot forward. His target was the weakest of the 3 spirit manifestation elders, the one standing to Samuel's right. Spirit manifestation realm, level 2. "You arrogant little brat." The level 2 elder roared, seeing an essence condensation youth daring to attack him. The level 2 elder felt deeply insulted. "I will crush you," the elder roared, violently circulating his level 2 spirit manifestation essence to form a massive, glowing phantom palm that swiped mercilessly toward Rhain. Rhain's speed didn't stop. He just casually raised his fist to meet the attack. At the exact moment Rhain moved, Harmon's eyes flashed with chilling, murderous intent. "Kill them all," Harmon roared. The restraint was completely shattered. 5 terrifying spirit manifestation auras detonated simultaneously. Harmon and Corey, both at the 5th level of the spirit manifestation realm, surged forward simultaneously. They locked directly onto Samuel, the strongest of the 3 at level 4. 2 level 5 experts against a single level 4. Samuel's face twisted in utter desperation. He drew his massive war axe and erupted his full aura, but the sheer difference in numbers and cultivation made it a foregone conclusion. Clang! Boom! Crack! Harmon's blue sword light slashed from the left, while Corey's golden halberd swept from the right. Samuel parried the sword, but the halberd hit him squarely on the chest, creating a deep, bloody tear. "You bastards, Dorian will avenge us," Samuel screamed, desperately swinging his axe in a wide arc to create distance. Harmon's sword pierced through the gap in Samuel's guard, driving straight through his left shoulder and pinning his arm in place. Ugh! Samuel let out a harrowing shriek of agony. In mere seconds, Samuel was hacked and battered into a bloody, unrecognizable mess by the combined power of Harmon and Corey. Before dying, there was only one thought in his mind. Could it be possible that Dorian really had fallen? Meanwhile, Doris and Silas, both at the 4th level, alongside Amos at the 2nd level, had converged on the remaining level 3 elder. 3 against 1. The outcome was obvious. The level 3 elder also soon followed the path of Samuel. On the cratered ground, Rhain stood over the broken level 2 elder. The man lay in a pool of blood, his arms twitching uselessly. "Wait!" The elder gasped, blood bubbling from his lips. "Wait, please! I surrender." Rhain looked down at him with the same expression one would give a stone on the side of the road. He raised his hand, heavenly severing palm. Boom! The second strike was the last. The palm print drove the elder 6 feet into the earth, obliterating whatever remained of his broken body. All 3 spirit manifestation elder of the Iron Peak sect were dead. Hundreds of Iron Peak disciples watching from the rear were completely paralyzed. The invincible elders they had just been cheering for were slaughtered like helpless livestock in the blink of an eye.